This is what happens when a narcissist realizes you are indestructible. Have you ever stood up to a narcissist, not with anger, not with revenge, but with quiet strength, and watched them struggle to break you? You didn't fall for their manipulation. You didn't give in to their games. You didn't react the way they wanted. And that terrified them. Because if there's one thing a narcissist fears most, it's someone who sees through them and still walks away. That person is you. Someone too strong. Someone too aware. Someone they simply cannot destroy. So what happens when a narcissist realizes this? When all their efforts to confuse, isolate, or emotionally destabilize you fail, they begin to unravel. Not dramatically, not publicly, but quietly, deeply, irreversibly. Today, we're going to explore the psychological breakdown of what occurs when a narcissist encounters someone they cannot destroy, someone who stands firm, refuses to be manipulated, and chooses peace over pain. This isn't about love. It's about control. And when they realize you are indestructible, their world begins to shift. Let's start by understanding a core truth. Narcissists operate from a place of emotional fragility disguised as strength. They build their world around dominance, control, and influence over others. Their sense of power depends on how much they can manipulate, confuse, or emotionally destabilize the people around them. When they meet resistance, especially from someone who refuses to be broken, it disrupts everything they believe about themselves. Here's what happens psychologically when a narcissist realizes you are indestructible. 1. They experience cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological term that describes the discomfort a person feels when faced with conflicting beliefs or behaviors. For a narcissist, one of their strongest beliefs is that they are powerful, that they can shape reality, that they can dominate any situation or relationship. But when they realize you won't break, that you don't react the way they want, that belief begins to crack. Their inner conflict grows stronger. Their confidence wavers. Their control slips. And that disruption creates internal chaos. Because now they face an undeniable truth. You are not like the others. You saw through them. And you chose yourself over their games. 2. They begin to doubt themselves quietly. Narcissists rarely show self-doubt, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In fact, beneath their bravado lies an ocean of insecurity, and when they fail to destroy someone, especially someone who once played a significant role in their life, it stirs that ocean. They question their own power. They wonder if their tactics are weakening. They replay past moments, trying to figure out where they went wrong. Of course, they won't admit this out loud. Instead, they tell themselves stories, ones where they were never really invested, or where you were already damaged before they met you. But deep down, they know the truth. You weren't broken before. And now, you still aren't, even after all their efforts. And that shakes them more than they'll ever let on. 3. They fear that you know too much about them. One of the most terrifying things for a narcissist is exposure. Beneath the charming smile, the grand gestures, and the confidence lies a deeply insecure person afraid of being seen as flawed, ordinary, or unworthy. And if you made it through their manipulation without breaking, if you saw through their mask and walked away, then you represent something they can't easily erase. You saw them. You understood them. You escaped them. And that knowledge terrifies them. Because you carry the truth. Truths they can't undo. Truths they can't rewrite. Truths they can't unshare. And that makes you unforgettable. 4. They lose control, and that makes them desperate. Narcissists thrive on dominance. They need to feel like they're in charge of conversations, relationships, outcomes. When you were in their life, they likely tried to manipulate, confuse, or undermine you in subtle or overt ways. That was their way of maintaining control. But the moment you stopped reacting the way they wanted, the moment you refused to play the game, you stripped them of that power. And that loss leaves them vulnerable in a way they hate. So they try to regain control through provocation, silence, or sudden reappearance. They test your boundaries. They send cryptic messages. They imagine new ways to pull you back into their orbit. But no matter what they do, you remain untouchable. And that frustrates them deeply. Because for the first time, they're dealing with someone who isn't scared of them. 5. They can't rewrite history without you. Narcissists rewrite history constantly. They tell themselves stories that paint them as victims, heroes, or misunderstood geniuses, whatever serves their ego best. But you don't fit neatly into their narrative. Moments when you stood up to them, times when you exposed their flaws, instances when you chose yourself over them. These memories disrupt their fantasy. They don't align with the version of reality they've created, and because of that, they can't fully erase you from their minds. They might tell themselves you were nothing, that you were replaceable, that they never cared. But deep down, they know better, and that's why they can't forget you. 6. They idealize you even if they won't ever say it out loud. One of the strangest paradoxes of narcissism is that they often idealize people after they've lost them. When you stop talking to them, they start remembering only the good parts, the times you gave them attention, validation, emotional energy. Suddenly, you become the one who got away, the person who was different, the one who knew them better than anyone else. Of course, they won't say this out loud, but inside, they begin to rewrite history, painting you as someone special, someone irreplaceable, someone who mattered more than they ever let on. Not because they loved you, but because you represented something they struggled to replace: familiarity, emotional stimulation, and a mirror to their hidden truths. 7. They carry unfinished business and you're still part of it. Narcissists hate unfinished business. They don't handle unresolved emotions well, especially when it comes to people who walked away. You weren't just another person in their life. You were someone who left and stayed gone. No begging, no chasing, no confusion, just silence. And that silence feels like defeat, because unlike others who stayed emotionally invested, you removed yourself completely. And that finality, that lack of closure, keeps them trapped in the past. They replay your memory. They imagine alternate endings. They search for ways to regain control. And despite everything, you remain somewhere in their thoughts, a lingering presence they can't erase. 8. They realize you broke the cycle, and that makes you dangerous. Narcissists live in cycles: idealization, devaluation, discard, replacement. They move from person to person, relationship to relationship, always searching for new sources of supply. But you broke that cycle. You didn't return calls. You didn't answer texts. You didn't reappear. You simply vanished without explanation, without apology, without weakness. And that kind of detachment is something the narcissist rarely faces, because for the first time, they weren't the one who ended the relationship. Someone else did. And worse, that someone doesn't look back. 9. They begin to resent you because you represent what they can't control. Resentment is a common emotion for narcissists, especially when they lose control. They resent your independence. They resent your clarity. They resent the peace you found without them. Because in their world, people are supposed to break under pressure. People are supposed to bend to their will. But you didn't. And that makes you dangerous. Because you proved that their power wasn't absolute. You proved that their manipulation doesn't work on everyone. And worst of all, you showed others what's possible. 10. They watch you heal, and that hurts them deeply. The most devastating thing you can do to a narcissist is heal. Because while the narcissist remains stuck in their cycle of manipulation, drama, and emotional instability, you are moving forward, rebuilding, growing, choosing peace. And that growth, that quiet transformation, becomes a living reminder of what the narcissist will never allow themselves to be: whole, free, human. And that's something they can't stand. Because if you could survive them, if you could rise above them, then others can too. 11. They try to reinsert themselves into your life but fail miserably. Eventually, most narcissists attempt to return, even if it's just briefly. They may message you. They may appear unexpectedly. They may try to provoke you. But here's what happens. You don't react. You don't engage. You don't fall for it again. And that non-reaction, that calm detachment, is what truly breaks them. Because they expected fear. They expected confusion. They expected you to still be emotionally invested. Instead, you're standing tall. And that proves something terrifying. You're free. And freedom is the ultimate betrayal. 12. They live with the quiet terror that others might see through them too. Once a narcissist realizes that you saw through them, someone who once gave them emotional fuel, and now gives them nothing, they begin to fear that others might too. What if others notice the same inconsistencies you did? What if someone else starts asking questions? What if the mask finally slips for everyone to see? That idea spreads like a virus in their mind. Because you weren't just someone who left. You were someone who left knowing. And that knowledge lingers, not just in their memory but in their fear. Because if one person saw through them, the illusion begins to crack. And once that crack appears, it can never be fully repaired. 13. They carry the memory of the one person who got away. Perhaps the most painful realization for a narcissist is knowing that you've moved on and that you're thriving without them. While they continue circling the same patterns, repeating the same destructive behaviors, you are becoming stronger, wiser, and more grounded. This contrast is unbearable for them, because it proves that they weren't necessary to your happiness, that you were better off without them, and that's a blow no amount of grandiosity can cushion. Because deep down, the narcissist knows the truth. You were the one who saw through them. You were the one who walked away. You were the one who healed. Without them. 14. They begin to doubt their own power, and that changes everything. Narcissists may act invincible, but underneath, they are fragile. And when they realize that you resisted every trick, every manipulation, every form of control they threw at you, they begin to question everything. Did their power weaken? Did their charm lose its effect? Did their usual tactics stop working? And the more they think about it, the more they realize you weren't broken by them. You weren't shaken by them. You simply left and never looked back. And that choice, that final act of defiance, changes everything. Because now, they're faced with a terrifying possibility. Maybe their power isn't as real as they believed. 15. They search for new sources of supply, but you still linger. Eventually, most narcissists move on outwardly. They latch on to new relationships, new conflicts, new sources of emotional stimulation. But even as they shift focus, you remain somewhere in the background, a lingering presence in their thoughts, especially during moments of insecurity or failure. Because you understood their games. You reacted until you didn't. You challenged them until you broke free. And that makes you unforgettable. Because while they may have found new people to manipulate, none of them quite match the emotional rhythm they had with you. None of them challenge them the same way. None of them leave them feeling as shaken. And that's why they can't forget you. 16. They realize you broke their narrative and that haunts them. Narcissists rewrite history constantly. They tell themselves stories that paint them as victims, heroes, or misunderstood geniuses, whatever serves their ego best. But you disrupted that story. You didn't collapse. You didn't cry endlessly. You didn't chase explanations. You simply walked away calmly, clearly, permanently. And that act of leaving, of choosing yourself, destroys their carefully crafted identity. Because if you could escape them, if you could walk away whole, then maybe you were the one in control. And that thought gnaws at them. 17. They cannot destroy your peace, and that destroys them. The most terrifying form of resistance for a narcissist isn't anger. It isn't confrontation. It isn't even revenge. It's peace. Because peace removes their power. Peace stops their provocation. Peace denies them the chaos they feed on. And once you choose peace, really choose it, you take back control. You stop giving energy. You stop engaging. You stop looking back. And that final act, choosing peace, is what dismantles the narcissist world from within. Because the second you stop giving them your energy, your attention, your time, your emotional space, you strip them of their oxygen, and that's the sound of them beginning to suffocate. They realize you were the only one who truly understood them and chose to leave anyway. Empaths, intuitive people, and emotionally intelligent individuals often end up seeing deeper into a narcissist than most ever do. You noticed the inconsistencies. You recognized the manipulation. You began to understand the mechanisms they use to maintain dominance. And once you did, you became unpredictable. Because unlike others who stayed confused, you broke free. And that's not something they can easily process. Because if one person saw through them, then others might too. And that idea terrifies them. 19. They carry the wound of being defeated, and that never heals. Narcissists don't heal from emotional wounds, especially the ones tied to ego. Being defeated not through anger, not through confrontation, but through peace and detachment is the worst kind of defeat, because it shows that you didn't need them to survive. It shows that you didn't need them to grow. It shows that you found peace without them. And that kind of victory isn't just painful. It's permanent, because now they carry the scar of having been escaped, and no amount of rewriting history can remove that mark. 20. They know you hold truths about them no one else does. Empaths and emotionally aware individuals often end up carrying the most damaging weapon of all: truth. You notice the inconsistencies. You recognize the manipulation. You understood the games they played. And now you've taken that knowledge with you. That's why they can't forget you. That's why they sometimes try to reappear in your life. That's why they watch from a distance. Because you represent something they can't undo. You saw through them. You left on your own terms. You stayed gone. And that means the empath holds the real story, the version of events that the narcissist can't erase. And that knowledge lingers in the narcissist's mind like a ghost they can't exorcise. So here's the truth. When a narcissist realizes you are indestructible, they begin to suffer internally. They experience cognitive dissonance. They doubt their own power. They fear exposure. They miss the emotional fuel you gave them. They carry unfinished business. But none of it reflects your worth. None of it means you should go back. None of it changes the fact that you made the right choice walking away. What it does mean is that you had more impact on them than they'd ever admit, and that's empowering. And while they may still think about you, you no longer have to think about them. Because the moment you stopped giving them your energy, your attention, your time, your emotional space, you reclaimed your power. And that's something no narcissist can ever truly forget. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, healing begins the moment you stop giving your energy to those who never deserved it. Stay strong, stay wise, and most importantly, stay free.